Hey folks, have you been wanting to find an easier way or a faster way to apply your post-processing preferences and settings for, subsequent models after generating those preferences for an initial model? Well, now you can with extensions in HyperWorks. So stay tuned for the rest of this video and I'll walk you guys through the process for creating these extensions for your particular post-processing preferences. Okay, so in order to understand how this extension works and how we can adjust the preferences or the options in this extension for your particular use cases or your particular contours, whatever it may be, we'll first need to understand how these extensions are built. So we'll take a look within this shortcut folder, this post-processing shortcut folder. We'll take a look at our extension XML, our toolbar XML, and our script TCL scripts. So we'll look at each of those in a file editor. Here I'll use Notepad++. So the first thing that's building out this extension is the extension.xml. And this just generally gives information about what the name of the extension is, what version it's applicable for, the description and author, and things like that, right? But some other important things to mention here are the resources line. So this will tell us where it'll grab the images for the buttons for this extension. So that's in the images folder. And then down here, we have some other lines that are defining which profiles this extension works for. So right now it's based on HyperView. So if you're interested, I would encourage you to try changing this to hypergraph and doing this a similar process for some hypergraph plotting. But we'll use HyperView, and we'll also call to our TCL script. So this is going to be the script that our extension points to actually generate the specific commands for the specific types of post-processing preferences we want. And then we have this other line in here defining out defining our toolbar XML, I should say, and that XML will actually define out the formatting of the toolbar itself. So going into each of those options, if we go to our toolbar XML file, so you'll see here we'll have a few lines of basically of actions that we're employing here. So each of these action tags basically is a button on the toolbar. So what we're saying here is this button with this tag here will be giving us this tooltip. So when you hover your cursor over that button, it'll tell you, plot preferences 1. And that button will use this image stored in the images file, and it'll invoke this particular command from the TCL script that we have. Okay, so you can have basically as many lines as these as you want. So each of these will define its own button that can have, its own set of post-processing preferences. And then continuing down here, we just have some extra lines just basically saying where these buttons are located, where this toolbar is located, which is on the left of our window. And then finally, the last text file we have in here is our TCL script that's actually running the commands to generate the post-processing preferences that we want. So you can have as many procedures in here as you'd like, but generally the toolbar will call to a specific procedure in this TCL plot. So you want to make sure that those line up accordingly. But to generate these lines, these commands to actually generate those post-processing preferences, we can do those using the HWC console within HyperView. So we'll first go ahead now and generate our initial post-processing preferences. Okay, so I've loaded up HyperView now. Now I'm going to load in an initial model to generate these post-processing preferences for. So I have a GFEM model. We'll go ahead and load in the OP2 file with our results in. All right. So first thing we want to do is we'll bring up our HWC console. So we'll go View, HWC console. Looks like I already have some commands in here, so I'm going to right-click and clear those. So what the HWC console will let us do is generate some, single command lines for each post-processing preference that we specify that we can then copy into that TCL script that the extension will employ. So, let's take a look at a few examples, like maybe for our first post-processing preference, maybe we want to generate some displacement contours. So we'll go contour, displacement, magnitude. That looks good. We'll apply those. Okay. Let's say I don't like this numbering convention. I can right-click here, change the numbering format to say auto. So that looks better to me, so we'll go with that. And maybe we'll also generate some vector plots of the displacement magnitudes as well. So we've got displacements, result in XYZ, so effectively our magnitudes, and we'll apply. Okay. And so then when we go back over to our HWC console, we can see those commands get generated, right? So generating that scalar displacement contour, showing the legend, formatting the legend, generating the displacement vector plot, et cetera, right? So what we can do is, well, I'll just left click to select all of those commands, and then I'm going to right click and say copy to TCL. And so that will give us the appropriate TCL equivalent commands that we can then just copy and paste into that TCL script. So now I'll open that TCL script. For these preferences here, I'm just going to paste those now within the procedure, that initial procedure. Okay. So generating displacement, showing legend, formatting the legend, showing the vector displacement. And let's say I want to have the vector plot along with the contour plot there at the same time. I can just delete this line that's clearing the contour plot. So delete that line. We'll save our script. Okay. So now we can go back in, generate, maybe some other types of plots you may be interested in. So first, to make this easier on myself, I'm going to clear a vector plot, and I'm going to clear my HWC console. Right-click, clear. So let's say maybe we also want to see maybe some von Mises stresses. So we can go contour, stress, von Mises. We'll apply some averaging here as well, maybe just some simple averaging. Hit apply. Okay. And let's say maybe we also want to see a tensor plot there as well. So tensor plot for stresses. Hit apply. And we'll format that plot as well. Okay. Now going back here, we can do the same thing. Right click, copy to TCL. Let's go back to our TCL script and we'll paste in those commands. And again, I'm going to remove the line here that clears that initial contour plot so that we can see our contour stresses along with our tensor plot in the same graph or in the same view. So we'll delete that. We'll save our script now. I also want to recommend, lastly, that you should likely consider putting in some commands to clear the previous plot preferences at the beginning of the procedure. So I would put at the beginning of each procedure clearing, scalar, vector, or any tensor plots from any previous settings here. So I'm going to do HWC, result tensor, scalar, and vector clear at the beginning of each of these procedures. So we'll save that, and we'll use this now as our script, our TCL script. And we can then go to our XML and maybe say for our tooltip, apply displacements. And for the second one, we can say apply stresses. Again, this is just the tooltip that it'll give you when you're hovering your cursor over the buttons. All right, once we have that set, we can then save that XML. All right. So from there, we should be good with our XMLs actually defining our extension. From there, we can start up a new HyperView window here. All right, so now that we have our HyperView up, we'll go ahead and load in our extension that we just created, we just defined. So we'll go File, Extensions, Add Extension, and we're going to call to this file path. That'll have our extension XML, toolbars, images, etc. All right, so we'll select this folder. To actually turn on the shortcut, we'll hit this little radio button. And now we have our options here for applying displacements and stresses. So now we'll load in our DFEM results. So, say now we have some other model that we want to apply those same preferences on quickly and easily. We can now load in that model and just hit these little toolbar icons to apply those plot preferences. So, very cool. Hope this was helpful for you, and hope this can save you guys some time in your post-processing workflows. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day.